Our first presentation deals with VCommerce. Our presenter is Diana Sheehan, GVP Client Services and Insights for InContext Solutions. Diana, take it away.
Thank you so much, John. I'm very excited to be here and talk to you guys a bit about what we're thinking about at InContext Solutions. At InContext, what we do currently is work to help our clients visualize their plans in store and also test and learn things that happen within the store within a virtual environment. And in thinking about that, we were very much struck by what has happened in 2020. One of the biggest things we know, and this looks at total commerce or e-commerce as a share of total retail. One of the things I think that we all inherently know within the industry is that e-commerce, while growing over the last several years, really has accelerated to a degree that is unprecedented in 2020, given the global pandemic and kind of the nature of things that have happened in kind of in the country today and globally today. One of the things that we saw, if you look at total commerce, is that between 2018 and 2019, you were seeing e-commerce grow at about an increased percentage point a year, going from 12 to 13 to 14%. And then at a total commerce level in 2020, what we are expecting is that a total market share of online sales versus in-store sales is actually going to jump to 21% roughly in 2020. Now, what's interesting is within the retail space, particularly in grocery and consumables, we've always seen things lag behind a little bit. We've seen apparel, books, consumer electronics move faster online than groceries, and the nature of that is really what the grocery sale is. It's a basket sale, not an item sale. And so e-commerce lends itself better to that item by item sale. What's interesting though is these trends that we see in e-commerce are absolutely manifesting themselves in a similar way, and if not in an even more accelerated way in 2020. FMI reported that over a 300% growth in online grocery sales in the beginning of the year as people moved into stay-at-home orders. And there's a ton of research out there that's been published where you really start to understand how that manifests in different ways. One of the things is actually thinking through actual online grocery sales as a share of total online or total grocery sales for e-commerce. In 2018 and 2019, we were looking at a market share online of between 3 to 5%, depending on what source you were looking at for e-commerce as a share of total grocery sales. What we are expecting in 2020 is to go from, say, 4%, 5% of total grocery sales are online to going to 10% or more of total grocery sales are online. Growth has essentially tripled, as we said, and is planning to then continue to accelerate. Research done by a number of different players is suggesting that 9 out of 10 shoppers who are shopping online today, driven by COVID, are going to continue to shop online for groceries in the future, which leads to a market share that within 5 years brings us from 10% in 2020 to 21% of total market share online in 2025. So if you look at what we're seeing here and you try to provide perspective, basically we are going to double the growth rate of online grocery share or sales as a percentage of total grocery sales in 5 years, when it took over a decade to get there in traditional e-commerce. And so what that means is we're going to have to think differently about e-commerce and grocery in particular, but across industries, across retail channels as we move into the future. You know, one of the things about grocery from a retailer perspective that we know is that the e-commerce experience for almost every grocery retailer out there is really not that different. You go in, we are used to an interface in which we can search by a product or search by a category, see 20 thumbnails, maybe there's an ad. And whether you're looking at Instacart or you're looking at Walmart or you're looking at Target or you're looking at Kroger, you're not seeing drastic differentiation in experience. There is different aspects with each retailer that are better or not as good. But overall, that experience is the same, which is the complete opposite of what retailers try to do in store. On the other side, one of the largest challenges for retailers as they've adapted to this e-commerce explosion is how do we make money on this trip? It is so different. We are not resourced the right way from a staffing perspective. We're not laid out the right way from essentially a distribution perspective. How do we make money in this space? And as you look at different ways to make money, a lot of it leans into things like, honestly, technology, AI to structure distribution the right way online, robots within different centers, as you think of Kroger and Ocado and others, to essentially fulfill these in a faster way. Less human hands leads to better profitability, right? There are a number of different avenues operationally that retailers have focused on to make this e-commerce experience profitable. But what they haven't started to tackle is, are there other ways to grow revenue within the e-commerce space that we haven't thought about yet? And ultimately, on the other side, shoppers are changing. If we have gone from 4% of total grocery sales being online in 2019 to 10% in 2020 to 21% in 2025, we need to rethink how we sell to our shoppers. That money is going to move to e-commerce whether we want it or not. So how do we make sure that we're getting our fair share of it when 90% of shoppers today say they are going to continue to embrace e-commerce moving forward and change and shift where they spend what they spend? How do you tackle impulse categories? How do you tackle food service categories? How do you tackle the shopping experience itself? Does it still have to look the way it does, 20 thumbnails, or can it look something different? As you take it to the other level, we talked about the retailer side of things. What about the shopper? Now, my gut is many of you on the phone today have shopped online for groceries. I know I have. I have 3 kids at home under 13. We've all been working at home. We're wanting to be safe. We're wanting to be smart. I've actually shopped. I'm an early adopter of e-commerce and particularly online grocery shopping because as someone in the consulting space, I traveled all the time and was always trying to figure out how things worked. E-commerce shopping, it's convenient in the sense that I can do it from my home or I can do it on my phone while I'm sitting on a plane or used to sit on a plane. But it's not easy in that I walk down an aisle and just throw everything in my basket that I need. I have to search for things. They're not normally together. It may actually not be something that takes an hour to do. It may be something that takes a week to do or a day to do because I hop in and grab what I want. Oh, wait, I need something else. So even my cycle of what that cart looks like, the process of that shopping trip is different. And it's funny because while it is convenient in some ways, it is actually less convenient in others. And shoppers, as they do this more and more, are going to start to say, I want more. I want this to be better. It becomes less about the fulfillment convenience and more about the experience itself during the shopping process. In addition to that, it really isn't easy to find the right products all the time. When you go and you type in something as simple as corn, you get corn in 5 different ways when it pops up in a search function. You get corn as produce within the fresh set. You get frozen corn. You get canned corn. You get cornflakes and corn pops, right? And so the question becomes, how do you make searching for the right product easier within the structure of the system? There could be AI to recognize what you shopped for in the past. The search functionality could be improved, but are there other ways to make finding what you want simpler in that e-commerce process? Lastly, as you look at things like promotional offers, you have to sort for what makes sense, or you have to go and look at a website to figure out what makes sense. That's not convenient. When you're shopping in a store, things on the end cap are generally on sale. They're promoted. You see flags that say, hey, 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 look at me. Pay attention to me. How can we make sure that the tools and tactics that we've learned in store, are there ways to reimagine that online to make promotional effectiveness just as successful, if not more so, within an e-commerce environment? These are all things that we at InContext really started to think about. And selfishly, me as the mom who shops online for groceries 90% of the time at this point, have thought about in the frustration of the shopping experience. So then it kind of came to me, look, I work for a company that uses virtual reality to test and learn things in store. We sit there, we set up planograms, we set up total stores. We let people use the software, or people choose to use the software to visualize how displays are going to look, how signage is going to look. Is a new product going to stand out? But when I talk to people, as I talked to my neighbor about virtual reality testing, she's like, aren't those the goggle things? Does anybody but gamers really use those? And it's like, no, virtual reality is not just about a headset. That is one way to engage. But for over a decade, numbers of companies within kind of this larger industry have been using 3D virtual reality to storytell and to test things. So what could that mean in this evolution of e-commerce? Well, we know that VR is already used in the industry. I've kind of just spoken to that, and we use it for a number of different things. We use it to test and learn. Some of you may have done that. We use it to explore store formats and understand how consumers respond. How is it to navigate, to storytell? We use it to understand from a visualization perspective, how can something be better, or to take from a headquarters office, pushing out to retail store managers what a concept should look like in store. We use this already in the retail space. Why not flip that and start to use it to make our shopping experience better for shoppers? The whole infrastructure of this concept is there. It's not created, and I will say that. This is where we envision the future. This is where we anticipate moving. We anticipate e-commerce becoming, or having shoppers have the choice to essentially opt for a standard e-commerce experience and or a VCommmerce experience, depending on how they want to shop. This is not about having 10 million people have headsets in their home. This is about having people on their iPad sitting there doing their grocery shop and just basically using the arrows in their fingers to dictate where they go. Or if they shop on their laptop, using their mouse to go where they go. It's doable, and it definitely could impact how people really evaluate the shopping experience. And what's interesting is virtual reality and using that with consumers in different ways is actually not drastically new. You have furniture manufacturers who have used augmented reality to explore what does a sofa look like in my living room, or what does this paint color look like in my bedroom. We actually have seen European retailers in this COVID world basically set up a store and then do virtual shops with someone working with them to decide what they want to bring into their home. So it's something that isn't outside of the realm of possibility, but it is certainly kind of a next step, a leap in where things could go. And why do we think this makes sense? Well, A, if it is easier, you already have e-commerce baskets that look more like stock-up trays. They just take a little longer to get there, right? Rather than an hour, it may be a day. If you structured an environment that was easier to shop off of a website, you actually could drive sales even further. You could capitalize on promotions and build up lift. You could introduce new concepts. You could do whatever you wanted to do. The sky is the limit. It also then potentially creates opportunities to improve your bottom line, right? Whether it is through kind of making sure that assortment optimized is focusing just on what's in stock and easy to access, or promoting within that things that are higher margin items or that are kind of complementary categories to things. There are a number of different ways that you could use a e-commerce experience paired with potentially AI or loyalty card data to personalize and revolutionize that shopping experience for any given shopper. From an experience perspective, I don't know about you, but I know there's got to be something out there that is stronger than what is there today. And the thing is, if any of you think about a website that you've been to recently for shopping that you like, I suspect that none of us are sitting there saying, okay, when I shopped at Mariano's this week, I loved that experience, right? And I think that's the idea, is how can we create that loving of an experience in a virtual environment on e-commerce so that you start to reflect your brand as a retailer or a manufacturer in a digital environment. It's doable. We just have to figure out how to get there. And then at a larger level, we know at this point 90% of shoppers are shopping for groceries online. How do we get the other 10% who might be doing other types of shopping online and bridge them over? Or how do we take your online grocery shopper and build them out in new ways or get them into new spaces? That becomes another opportunity. From the other side, and I've talked about this kind of a bit, but VCommerce would allow you to actually start to meld the things that make a retailer or a manufacturer come to life in store and bring that into an online kind of environment, not only through content capture and things like that, but also through kind of shopper marketing initiatives and things like, and through improving speed in the shopping process, improving overall satisfaction and understanding how much someone saved, did they get a good deal? All of those metrics that drive what shoppers care about in store, as they move online, while there may be some attributes that are more important, those core pieces of what make a shopping experience useful and fun and enjoyable in store are going to start to be expected online. And you want to be ahead of the shopper as they get that and delight them and surprise them instead of behind the curve, being that one player who nobody wants to shop for or shop with. So where you start, and this is really simple, it's starting with what we already do. And when I say we, it really is. So many manufacturers, so many retailers today are already doing stuff online. Everyone has seen how to use 3D technology and virtual at some conference somewhere visually. It's really not that big of a leap to take this step from e-commerce to offering a v-commerce experience. So how do you do that? Well, we're going to show you completely made up just an idea of what we think that's going to look like now. So if you think you're a shopper and you imagine you go to a website the way you normally do today, what if after seeing those itemized products you get the choice? You want to instead shop virtual. You are the shopper, you are choosing. You are not forcing anyone into it. Let's say they bring you into this virtual world. Well, the cool thing about v-commerce is the rules of a store don't apply. So you could structure this any way you want. In this modeled idea, what we said is, let's say someone knew they had to get breakfast foods. They had to stock up of breakfast food and snack foods because they have kids home remote learning and they are going through stuff faster than they expected. Well, why not create a store environment just focused on breakfast foods? And then start to look through those products across categories that may never be together in a physical store, but bring them together in a digital store so that people can shop for their specific occasion instead of having to shop by category, right? Let's say you needed honey for your tea. Let's say you were thinking about cereal. What does that look like? Being able to show the imagery of a product rather than pictures in 6 sets showing them the ability to 3D kind of virtually model every aspect of a product. Well, that's interesting. That lets me get more information that I need. Maybe there's a subset where you can add a video or a marketing campaign. Okay, so cereals next, what else do we need? Well, you know what, maybe I need butter and cream cheese. I didn't want corn flakes, I wanted something else. Everything can be brought together in one place, driven by what you as a retailer and the manufacturer you're working with feel that makes sense for your shopper. And again, it's all driven by shopper behavior. And then as you go through and you cross multiple temperature states, here we had frozen with dairy, with produce, with shelf stable. People make their shopping trip, they check out, and it moves them right back to the traditional e-commerce site to do final checkout and capture everything else. This is what we imagine. We don't imagine something where it's a total store and people are walking down the aisles. The truth is, with the rare exception, nobody really likes to do that no matter how wonderful your store is. People are shopping off a list. What the idea that we have for VCommmerce is really tapping more into the specific occasions and allowing you, at least at the starting point, to use occasion-based shopping to build baskets. Candidly, whether it's for holiday shopping, what do I need for my Thanksgiving meal, Christmas baking, or snacks to go, breakfast. It could be anything, and I think that's the beauty, is the sky really is the limit. And then where would it go? What we think it goes to is today, and we just gave you that as a demo, just a base example. No one is doing this right now, right? This is us just using our brain and playing around. But the idea of moving from category to curated stores, the store within the store concept, but in digital, then moving into something where maybe AI can dictate what people see based on their loyalty card data, and actually having customized store within a stores. We know you buy all of these products that classify as breakfast. What do you need today? That could be where we go. This becomes essentially a sales channel in and of itself. And I say this as someone who grew up on the manufacturer side as well as the research side. You know, I know this may sound kind of crazy, but does this become a marketing platform for retailers and for manufacturers, right? If you just saw that very rough mock-up of a breakfast store occasion, wouldn't signage make it look a little nicer? What if you tapped into a video when you picked up a product and looked at it that promoted the newest item in the set? There is so much that could be done there, or could evolve there, and it becomes potentially an opportunity to market to your shoppers within that digital store environment in a way that's much more engaging than classic banner ads. And again, that move towards personalization has been the word of the year for the last 3 years, and it's not going to go away. And the more that we have access to data about who we are as shoppers, the better we are positioned to truly customize a shopping experience that matters to me as an individual and to everyone else around me having different experiences. That's where we anticipate this could evolve. And you know, the truth is, we are a VR company. Headsets are cool. There will be a point in the future. It's not tomorrow. It's not next year. But in the future, there will be a point where that headset is in the majority of households, especially as you look at how prices and technology have changed. Right now, you could use this using a mouse or an iPad. In the future, we do see this being truly experiential and people doing it from their homes if they choose. But it's a stair step to get there. It's not jumping from one place to the other, just like e-commerce has been a stair step from that most basic Amazon page to what we have now both in the apps and on our computers. So,
Diana, we had a question. Diana, we had a question came in in the chat box right now. I'll read it out to you. How much effort does it take to maintain a fully updated set of 3D product imagery and info to enable this level of VCommmerce?
That is a phenomenal question, and I hate to say this, I am going to give you a typical research consulting firm answer. It depends. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right? If you're focusing on one category and one brand, it actually could be relatively inexpensive. If you're wanting to have, as a retailer, if you're wanting to bring in a number of different categories, obviously it's really going to be driven by what you're trying to accomplish. That's going to dictate how you want to update. And it also then ties to how often you want to update, right? A lot of categories, you don't see drastic changes in packaging. You don't see drastic changes in product count. You have new items come in and new items come out, but it's not significant. Those all simplify how this can be done, right? Instead, if you want to flip it, and I'll use a category like soda or cereal, where there are lots of marketing campaigns with new packaging, right? You can also choose then how often do you want to update those? Are they once a year? Are they once every 3 months? All of those kind of drive what it is, but it's one where this could actually be done relatively inexpensively if what you're trying to do is just get a pilot going. I hope that helps.
Okay, very good.
So look, it's where we're at, and I want to reinforce, for this for us is really, we think that there is legs here. We are actually in the process, we're launching a rough concept of what I just showed you. We're launching a survey today where we're actually talking to shoppers directly. What do you think about this? Would you choose this? Do you like this? What do you like and don't like about it? And so over actually the next 3 weeks, you're going to start to see content pieces coming out from us, both on our website, and then I'll be putting it all over LinkedIn, kind of finding out, right? This is a theory and a hypothesis for us, but we think that this is really something that is going to be the future of where we go. So we're doing work here, and we anticipate, particularly if we see that there is shopper appetite for this, that this is something where you guys, both retailers and manufacturers, may want to start exploring this in 2021, because it's also something where you could implement this within months, not years. It's so different in how you go about it. And it can tie not only direct to consumer, if you're a manufacturer or a retailer, but also B2B, if you're working with kind of food service manufacturers, et cetera. We do anticipate moving from tablet and laptop integration as the first step, ultimately into headsets when the technology and the penetration is there. But I think it's going to be a journey, just like e-commerce has been a journey. And so it's one where it's just, as you start to think through it, what does that journey look like? And do you want to be on the front end of it, or do you want to be one of the later adopters once things have been proven out? So with that, I know I'm kind of fast, but opening it up, any questions? Happy to answer
Actually, yeah, Diana, we got 3 or 4 questions came in. The first one, I would assume that you would need a robust product master data system that is dynamically updated and have an ability to also manage promotional content as well. True or false?
That is true. From a content library perspective, you're definitely going to need to have access to that. But there are a number of different players that you know, as you work with, if you have e-commerce capabilities, or even in working with retailers, you know, there are players out there that have content libraries that you can tap into, or you can create it from scratch. From a promotional content perspective, signage, things like that, those are all things where you could create them from scratch. Or if this concept really starts to have legs, there's possibly ways to tap into things that are universal. So it is, the truth is, I think as we go through what VCommerce is going to be, it's not necessarily going to tap in, it's not going to be necessarily that much harder than what we're doing for e-commerce already. If you think about 3D modeling and you think about e-commerce, 3D modeling for VCommerce is a 6-sided image, front, back, top, bottom, side, side. If you think about what often manufacturers are sharing with retailers, particularly retailers like the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Targets, who really focus on letting that content be available to shoppers to make a decision, you've already got all the inputs you need. And so it's just a matter of pulling them together and having a 3D view of that instead of the static 2D view of that in multiple iterations.
Okay. Next question. Why do you think consumers would be interested in virtual shopping when they've just started online grocery shopping? I guess your survey might answer that, Diana, right?
I think it's our survey is going to answer that, but I think it's more than that, right? If you think about the life stage of any shopping experience, once shoppers get comfortable, they want more. We always want more, and so I mean, if you step back and look at yourself as an individual shopper, do you love shopping online today? And if you do, is it the experience or is it the convenience? Is it the benefits outside of the shopping trip, right? If you think about classic grocery retailers, some of those retailers who have really fundamentally changed the nature of grocery are retailers who have leaned into experience in unique ways to stand apart. The Wegmans of the world, Whole Foods, Hy-Vee, H-E-B. You know, it's one of those elements where shoppers are trained to always expect something better to come out. And that applies in grocery as well. And so I think that's the thing is to sit there and understand that grocery is already 10 years behind, roughly. Grocery is behind in the experience that they give shoppers compared to an Amazon, compared to potentially a Best Buy, compared to pure play e-commerce players. And so if grocery is behind, as shoppers get introduced to these technologies, which they are now in other channels online, they're going to start coming to grocery asking for more because they're seeing it in other places. And so I think that's it. Ultimately, we as shoppers are never satisfied. So every time we get comfortable, we're going to ask for the next best thing.
Okay. Next question, Diana. What are the barriers to virtual commerce?
Well, I think honestly, one of them is what you guys are tapping into. Virtual commerce from a execution perspective, content libraries, the quality of those content libraries, and the frequency in which that needs to be kind of managed is going to be a part of the conversation, right? Imagery is important. And it's something where if you look at classic e-commerce today, there is always that need to make sure that images are right. So it's essentially the same challenge with e-commerce as it exists today is going to be the driving factor with what makes v-commerce successful. But on the other side, the nuance to that is that v-commerce allows other types of imagery, customized displays, customized signage, brought in a way that's slightly different. What's interesting is I don't think shopper adoption, and again, the survey we're going to be doing will help us validate or disprove our theory there. I don't think shopper adoption is going to be a problem. I mean, so many of us have been engaged in kind of gaming platform. And as long as it's through our computer or our laptop, we don't have to change behavior. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think it really is the hardest part about all of this is going to be making sure those digital libraries are up to date, are easily accessible, that everything is one place. And that's something that's going to really take manufacturers and retailers working together to get there, along with content providers that are out there. I think that's the big kind of key in all of this is making sure that works. But that's the challenge that's existed for the last 5 years too.
Okay, well that leads us to the last question. What might the adoption curve look like in virtual commerce?
I think that it's interesting. I suspect that where this is going to start is this is going to start with players within the retail space who are really more comfortable taking a leap in the e-commerce space, right? And so what's interesting is if you think about how e-commerce itself has evolved in grocery, it hasn't necessarily started with the largest players. It started with those mid-regionals who can kind of really take some risks without being held accountable on the street. And so, what I anticipate is going to happen is I would see a momentum build, and I don't know the number, but I would see some manufacturers who are anxious to test out direct-to-consumer embracing this. I see some smaller or some larger pure plays who have money to invest, potentially startups, things like that, exploring this concept. And then I'd actually see some of those super regionals. And I throwing out names, but like as you think of a Hy-Vee who launched Hy-Vee aisles years ago, right? A Hy-Vee or a ShopRite, some of these players that jumped into e-com from the very beginning, I could see them wanting to test this, or I could see the larger players wanting to test this. That's the thing is, as long as you maintain your existing e-com, it's actually a pretty safe thing to pilot outside of kind of just making sure that digital content is there. And the truth is there are a lot of players who have done test and learn already. And so it's not necessarily that you have to start from scratch because that content exists already, both from a retailer side and a manufacturer side.
Okay, well that is the end of the questions that came in, Dana. I thought that was really great. And if our listeners would like to contact Diana to follow up on the presentation, her contact information is on the screen, her email address. You can get to her directly that way. Again, thank you very much, Diana. An excellent job.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.